Good afternoon to you. It's 4:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Jennie Taer from the New York Post is here at 4:30. Congressman Scott Perry joins us at 5 o'clock. And then at 5:30, the economist for this program, Dr. E.J. Antoni, is here. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The headlines coming in now, that massive spending bill in jeopardy, Fox reports, amid GOP revolt. It's about time. And that is, it's not an in-house revolt, although it's starting to become one, apparently. It's you insurrectionists on the outside of the Capitol who have apparently changed the dynamic over the last hour. Also, a tip of the hat to President Trump. A lot of you have been writing in, calling in, saying you'd like to see President Trump speak up about all of this. Well, according to Lawrence Jones at Fox, he says that I'll just read his tweet, his X post. We haven't settled on what to call an X post yet, so it's an X post. Quote, I just spoke with the president-elect, real Donald Trump, and he is, quote, totally against, end quote, the proposed CR. So his words are, quote, totally against. Well, is that not a death knell? Sounds like a death knell. I think I heard it. Somewhere in the distance, there's a death knell going off. For this legislation. So now you see Politico reporting. It looks like Mike Johnson is trying to regroup and pass a, quote, clean CR. Also, we've got Fox's Chad Pergram also reporting that this thing is headed towards a, quote, clean CR potentially. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But, it is larded up. The current iteration of the bill, this 1,500 pages, is so larded up, it's unbelievable. For instance, there's a provision in the, quote, continuing resolution. This has nothing to do with continuing anything. It's not even a resolution. It's just everything about this is a lie. This is just Congress looking to sneak laws past you without your knowledge, but unfortunately for them, we're reading. So here's one. They're trying to change the legal process for whether or not House offices have to comply with disclosure of any House data. So if the government, say, goes to Apple or Google and issues a subpoena and wants to, investigate some of the data they have, the House is looking right now to insulate members of Congress from the very legislative requirements that you would be subjected to. So that members of Congress would become, what's the phrase? What's the phrase they use all the time? Oh, above the law. They would be above the law. What do they have to cover up? Why are they working so feverishly in an environment where if you had to pick a job on Earth that is supposed to have maximum transparency, what would it be? It'd be employee of the federal government. It'd be somebody who makes money from your tax dollars, who is supposed to be working in the public's interest. Well, if that's the case, maximum transparency should be on display, shouldn't it? Maximum transparency. This is the opposite of that. This is an attempt to insulate members of Congress from scrutiny and perhaps prosecution. Remarkable. Also, the congressional resolution, the continuing resolution package includes a section 629, entitled Regional Biocontainment Research Laboratories. The heck is that? Why do we need... Am I reading that correctly? Biolabs are inside of this legislation? Yeah. The Secretary of Health and Human Services shall make awards to establish or maintain, as applicable, not fewer than 12 regional biocontainment laboratories. Biolabs? We're going to build... This is really meant to screw with you, isn't it? We're going to build a dozen biolabs? In what country? Where are we going to do that? Where are we going to do that? We've spent a lot of money in China on this subject. What else? Let's see what else is in there. Of course, they They include benefits, health benefits for members of Congress. They exempt themselves from the same Obamacare crap that you have to be subjected to. They would allow E15 ethanol, which is gasoline blended with 15% corn-based ethanol, to be now sold year-round, meant to be a giveaway, a complete giveaway, a subsidy for ethanol. It just expanded. It also contains, let's see, a bill that would transfer control. Oh, you've heard about this. It would transfer control of Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium from the federal government to the District of Columbia, which is meant to pave the way for the Redskins to move to D.C., to be at RFK, to play home games in the nation's capital. Oh, that's all well and good. Why is it a part of a CR? Why? So now we're doing favors for NFL teams in a 1,500-page document? No, thanks. Do a separate piece of legislation. There's also a measure inside of the CR that would ban what they call the publication of non-consensual intimate visual depictions, the New York Times reports, including deep fake pornography, and require social media platforms to have procedures in place to remove the content after being notified by a victim. Okay, why isn't that a separate piece of legislation? Why is it being jammed into this thing? Are you telling me that you wouldn't be able to accrue enough support in Congress for that? What are they hiding? Why do you need to jam it in here? Yeah. Let's and then there's others. There's a great X account, Small Government Lizard, who's been taking screen grabs of some of the garbage. I love Small Government Lizard. They're going to have recycling and composting accountability. That section is called the Recycling and Composting Accountability Act. That sounds fun. Some accountability for recycling. They're going to make sure, I presume, that your cans, your glass, and your paper is all separated. It's not in the same bin. They'll have extra funding for feral swine eradication. That's in there. The Feral Swine Eradication Lobby with a big victory. The Wool Trust Fund, wool, I like from sheep, wool trust fund is going to continue, and you will be paying for advertising to promote wool. That's a part of this. Let's see. You get to pay now for juvenile delinquents to get their driver's licenses. They're changing the word homeless inside of the U.S. code, inside of law. You won't refer to people as homeless individuals by law anymore. Instead, it will now be individuals experiencing homelessness. This is all in this stupid 1,500-page package. You're going to subsidize health insurance for members of Congress. They're making it harder for you to get paid if you're injured by a vaccine. That's in this. They have a whole section. It says exclusion of injuries eligible for petition under Title 21. Notwithstanding any other provision of this section, no individual may be eligible for compensation under this section with respect to a vaccine that, at the time it was administered, was included in the vaccine injury table under Section 2114. In case you were curious about that. They're going to name some places after dead congressmen. That's happening too. They're promoting music tourism in the United States. They are extending the sheep production and marketing grant program. Sheep production. How do they make sheep? How's that done? And then the Global Engagement Center is getting more funding. The Global Engagement Center, which is a censorship arm of the federal government, designed to hurt especially conservatives. Speaker Mike Johnson is leading the effort here to get, what was up until the past hour, apparently, to get this passed. And it was it Gabe Kaminsky who's all over this today? I think it's Gabe, because Gabe's excellent reporting on the subject has been just can't miss. Gabe Kaminsky over at the Washington Examiner. And so he pointed out that, they're going to continue funding the Global Engagement Center. And Matt Taibbi, I'll start with him. Matt Taibbi wrote about it today. He said, There's a world of an ugly development. There's word of an ugly development in a fight over the continued funding of the State Department's Global Engagement Center. Gabe Kaminsky of the Washington Examiner, the young reporter whose extensive digging on GEC beginning in 2023 was crucial in shining a light on its funding of blacklisting efforts, reports that the agency, scheduled to be shuttered, may actually get a one-year lifeline. According to a congressional source familiar with the matter, the GEC provision was a private demand from Senate Democrats in exchange for Republicans getting a provision aiming to protect small businesses from certain fines approved by the Biden administration under a bill called the Corporate Transparency Act. By the way, I know that just as an aside, I know that the Corporate Transparency Act has been a total disaster for small businesses. I've heard from small business owners who are saying that it is absolutely punishing. There is no question Congress should relieve you of that horrendous burden. But why is any of this jammed into a, quote, continuing resolution? And I love that. Senate Democrats are saying we will let up on hurting small businesses only if you let us censor Americans. That's the arrangement that Senate Democrats are fighting for. What a disgrace. Matt Taibbi says, I'm still trying to clarify what's happening, but I want readers to know that if the Republicans or the incoming administration sells out voters on the speech issue, you will hear about it here, meaning from him on his website. The GEC, the Global Engagement Center, escaping the chopping block would be a blow, that is, to free speech. So Gabe Kaminsky reached out to Speaker Johnson's office about this today, and here's what he heard back. Quote, Speaker Johnson has killed multiple efforts to pass a 5-year reauthorization of the GEC during the past year, including as recently as the National Defense Authorization Act last week. This bill ensures the incoming Trump administration has the maximum ability and authority to determine how to handle the office, its authorities, and funding. Oh, come on, please. You had an opportunity to kill it right now, not to extend its funding. In a 1,500-page package, you included pay raises for members of Congress. You couldn't just defund, get rid of, destroy this place and perhaps refer the people involved for criminal prosecution for violating the First Amendment rights of Americans. And so the excuse is, well, at least we're not doing it for 5 years. And they say that, well, there was a recent push to do that in the defense bill, and we stopped it. A 5-year extension. Oh, we stopped it. Okay, so Senate Democrats want to censor us for 5 years, and House Republicans want to censor us for 1? Is that what you're telling me? How about none? How about no censorship? And so Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have stepped up. This Department of Government Efficiency is already going great. We're not paying these guys a dime. You realize that? Not a single dime has put out, and they've achieved more than all 535 members of Congress already. And how much do we pay them? Oh, we pay them a lot, at least $174,000 a year per person, plus their staffs. And so it looks like you have President Trump has come out against this. Elon Musk has come out against this. Vivek Ramaswamy has come out against this. There's growing numbers of members of Congress who have come out against this. It's all happening as we're speaking right now. And Elon, just 20 minutes ago now, at the top of this hour, is already declaring this bill to be dead. He said, quote, your elected representatives have heard you, and now the terrible bill is dead. The voice of the people has triumphed, he writes. I hope he's right. Things are looking up. Things are looking a lot better than they were, let's say, an hour and 20 minutes ago. Stay with us. More ahead, including your calls. We've got some calls coming in right now. Sam, Alexandria, line 3. Sam, you're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Hey, Vince. How you doing today? It's a great day, isn't it?
Well, it's becoming better at the moment, yes.
Yes, sir, as it evolves. And you know, my call is based upon it's like there's a tectonic shift in communications and how it affects political focus that, you know, ever since the election and with Trump winning as he has, I think that we've seen an evolution in how business is being done now, with communication from the citizenry directly to the politicians, and it's as if they did not read. They haven't read the room.
Right.
They don't understand that business has changed, guys. That the citizens now have a new avenue is to approach and read and understand what's going on, and we're not playing this game anymore.
And people are very aggressively keeping an eye on what the government is up to. I saw last night, as this legislation came out, people were feeding the text of it through Grok, the artificial intelligence platform on Twitter, on X, in order to assess, hey, give me some of the top lines on these first 100 pages. And so people were using every means available to them to go through this. That means the American people are very much awake and paying attention, Sam.
Oh, absolutely. And it's fantastic. What a great time to live during this evolution of communications.
Yes.
And that we could actually see this Mungaso, if I can use the term, legislation that is just so packed with, as you said, lard and fat.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you're like, seriously, we need to have a continuing resolution to pay for your salaries or for these other things that have nothing to do with the function of government.
Yeah, they're just trying to sneak it in there because, as always, it's about deceit. It's about rewarding themselves and their paymasters. And you know what's amazing? And when I say paymasters, I don't mean taxpayers. I mean their donors. What's amazing, Elon Musk just mounted this legendary, overwhelming campaign against this rushed legislation. It looks like he's killing it right now in his tracks. President Trump joining in the effort. What else does that tell you about Elon Musk? He is almost the only billionaire in the country who fights not to be enriched by this shady, deceptive legislation. He's one of the only ones. Have you ever heard of something like this? A rich billionaire in the United States fighting not to get paid? That's what Elon just did. And today, I thank him for that. Coming up on the program, we're going to chat with Jennie Taer of the New York Post. We had a lot to get into. We have problems coming across our border still. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Congressman Scott Perry will be here at 5 o'clock. We'll talk to him about the latest on Congress's spending shenanigans. Is this 1,500-page bill actually dead? Seems to be headed that way, thankfully. And then economist E.J. Antoni is here at 5:30. You're hearing all of this economic news right now. The markets are in upheaval over the Fed and its rate cuts and what it's signaling about 2025. We'll untangle all of it with EJ. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. During the presidential campaign, President Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, brought up a number of issues that are very important to the American people as it relates to our border. Certainly getting control of the border, but also pointing to the fact that there have been entire communities that have been overwhelmed by foreign nationals placed there by the Biden administration, whether it's Springfield, Ohio, or Aurora, Colorado. And in fact, during the campaign, we saw viral video footage of gang members taking over apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado, and the media telling us it's no big deal, there's no problem. Well, Fox News had this report yesterday. Police detaining what appear to be gangsters at that very apartment complex that became viral during the campaign.
Okay, Aurora, Colorado now. This is a live look now. The sun is up there in that state, and police have now detained 14 people and reported armed home invasion. That's the same apartment complex where a lot of people were complaining about the armed Venezuelan gang members roaming the halls. Reports indicate that investigators said that several suspects entered the apartment and had two people inside. The suspects then reportedly moved the victims to another apartment complex, or rather another unit on the property where police said they were found threatened and bound. An adult man sustained a non-life-threatening stab wound. At the moment, police say it's unclear if the suspects are connected to the Venezuelan game Tren de Aragua, but we'll get a live report in Colorado 30 minutes away and bring you the latest on that developing story.
the Aurora, Colorado Police Chief Todd Chamberlain further explained what happened.
It was a male and a female. They were accosted by approximately 13 to 15 armed individuals. They were pistol whipped, they were beat, they were mistreated. One of the male was actually stabbed, he had a stab wound. So does that fall in the category of torture for me? Yeah, it does. There is a high assumption that they may be affiliated with the TDA gang. I had a discussion with an individual from the White House, and that occurred back on September the 23rd, I believe. And that person basically told me that, hey, once these immigrants get across the border, that's all we really care about. And to me, that's a problem.
In other words, the Biden administration straight up told the Aurora, Colorado police chief, sorry, not our problem. Once they're across the border, that's the end of our job. Oh, holy cow. Joining us now, Jennie Taer, reporter for the New York Post, who is tracking that and so much more. Jennie, good to have you back with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, this gang, Tren de Aragua, they're Venezuelan. What else should we know about them, and where are they?
Right. So now we've learned that just over the course of the last couple of years, under the Biden administration, within, coming across the border then, these migrants have spread to at least 18 states. And that's an alarming reality for a gang from Venezuela that had to make their way up here, had to be smuggled, make their way past Border Patrol. Many of them were vetted, so they were released with the vetting that's done at the border. Normally they come across without tattoos or any markings. And so Border Patrol has to rely on them to self-identify because, of course, Venezuela is not going to tell us who their citizens are or what they were up to in Venezuela. And once they got here, they spread to sanctuary cities. They went to New York. They started to create gun smuggling operations in the migrant shelters. They started to recruit within the migrant populations that had arrived with them. And they grew their operations. They are now involved in prostitution in multiple states. They're involved in human smuggling at the border. They're involved in drug trafficking as well as gun smuggling. They've been taking over apartment complexes, like you said, in Aurora and other areas of the country, even here in Texas where I live. And they've become so savvy within just a couple of years, which is not shocking if you know what they've been doing in Venezuela in the past, which is they took over a major prison there and drove out the guards. And they created like their own empire in that prison. It's called the Tocaron prison. And one of the biggest hurdles with being able to nip this issue in the bud is the fact that under the Biden administration, the Maduro regime closed the door on deportation flights and just decided we're not going to receive our citizens that you're trying to deport. And so this is a big issue that now the Trump administration will now inherit.
Yeah. How convenient. So Venezuela says they're not going to accept the worst people in the world being sent back to their country, which is, of course, in their national interest not to have gang members in the country. And instead, we get stuck with the problem?
Right, exactly. And, this is something that the Trump administration says they are going to fix, and they are going to force either another country near Venezuela or they're going to force the Maduro regime to take their citizens back, just like with all of these threats he's giving to countries like Mexico and Canada over the crisis at the northern and southern borders. And he's putting in people like Tom Homan, of course, who's very hawkish on the issue to really tackle this. It's something that, is going to involve a whole of administration effort. I'm sure Marco Rubio will have to make some inroads with, the Venezuelan regime there because they stopped those flights, those deportation flights, when Maduro said, well, you're sanctioning us. And that's not fair. And so it'll be interesting to see how Trump, uses his threats against that regime to ensure that he's able to get these gangsters out of our country.
Yeah, it's, in terms of countries who've had to deal with these types of gangsters, a perfect example, the one that leaps to mind, is El Salvador. El Salvador, home to MS-13. MS-13 started in Los Angeles, but it was Salvadoran migrants in Los Angeles who made up MS-13, who do make up MS-13. And back in El Salvador, they had this growing gang problem. President Bukele there just arrested everybody. They arrested him. He arrested all the MS-13 gangsters. He made it. He really cleaned up the entire country and made it much more safe. But it takes that kind of willpower and popular support to actually get this done, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Well, and it's also just what we've seen Tren de Aragua become is way beyond what MS-13 ever has been in this country. I mean, they had a little bit more of an advance. They were working on their whole gang before they came to the US, and then they came here and they started working immediately. And not to mention the fact that they are a prison gang. So we should be concerned also what they're doing in our prisons, because many of them are locked up in federal prisons. Some of them are locked up in ICE custody, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where they've been able to breed and grow. And so if they're not being deported, either they're on our streets creating havoc on
Yes.
our communities, on the innocent, or they're in the prisons growing their operations.
When you talk about the comparisons to MS-13, I mean, how vicious is this gang? You know, MS-13 is notable for its viciousness. It's literally satanic that they worship the devil. They have basically conducted such horrific killings. They leave bodies mutilated in distinctive patterns in order to signal that it was MS-13 who did the killing. How does Tren de Aragua compare?
So right now, the federal authorities believe that there are roughly 600 Tren de Aragua members within the United States. And those members are all across the country, like we said, in 18 states. They are very similar in brutality with MS-13, whose motto is rape, kill, and control. I mean, they've done similar horrific crimes to our own Americans,
Yeah.
and their biggest targets are American cops. They earlier this year put out a green light to shoot cops in the United States, and they've already been doing that in New York. They've attacked NYPD, they've shot at them, and they've just brutalized locals as well. I mean, they have moped snatch and grab theft gangs. They really have found a foothold in sanctuary cities, and then what they've done is they've kind of bopped around to other areas of the country, committed crimes, gone back and forth to other areas. Because when I see these cases come through and I get documents on these individuals, I see the history all over the country. And for some reason, the federal authorities have not taken them into custody after multiple crimes, or they've released them from custody. It's like this hot potato issue, and someone has to take accountability and control of it and remove these individuals before it gets worse.
There was during the political campaign, of course, as I mentioned at the outset, during the presidential campaign, President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance, now incoming Vice President J.D. Vance, they pointed to what was happening with Tren de Aragua in Aurora, Colorado, and the media set about downplaying this. Famously, ABC News host Martha Raddatz kept insisting that there was really nothing to this. And that it was that the gang's activity, quote, was limited to a handful of apartment complexes. This is, in other words, it's not that big of a deal. What did you think of certainly the media's behavior during that moment, and the extent to which the broader press outside of the New York Post, with your fine publication, is even concentrating on this?
Right. Well, I've been to Aurora, so I've seen this firsthand. I've gone to these apartment complexes. I've talked to the neighbors. I've talked to people who live there, and I've talked to people who have fled those apartment complexes. And the writing is completely on the wall about what's been going on there. People are living under threat of Tren de Aragua in these apartments and around them. They're terrified. They hear gunshots. The buildings are riddled with bullet holes. The cars are riddled with bullet holes. There's just lawlessness going on in and around those complexes. And unfortunately, Aurora, their mayor, the governor of Colorado, the previous police chief, now there's a new police chief who's been very open about this issue, but for so long they were denying the severity of this issue and even denying that it existed. The governor called it imagination. It wasn't imagination. There's documentation of it. I've gone through police reports and court documents and spoken with these witnesses.
Yeah.
And even in these different crimes, it's cited that the victims have said that the Venezuelan gang had taken over that apartment complex, was charging people rent, multiple complexes. Some of those apartments have been shut down by the city. it is extremely out of control, and the denial was only a disservice to the citizens of that area and to the rest of the country, which has now been victim to the crimes. Because as you mentioned, there was that viral video of the men storming into one of the units while heavily armed. Two of those individuals ran from the scene and ended up getting nabbed in New York City. I mean, this is a nationwide issue.
Yeah, maybe the people of Aurora, Colorado should sue ABC. I mean, they do settle in these defamation suits, so maybe they'll get something out of them. In the meantime, Jennie Taer, New York Post, thank you for your excellent coverage and your time today. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Always. All right, hold on. I've got some more breaking news to share with you in just a moment, as now President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, are weighing in on today's dramatic spending fight in Washington. They've got something they'd like to say to you. I'll share it with you in just a moment. Chaos on Capitol Hill right now because that massive spending package, they were trying to slip it past us without anybody paying attention. Doesn't seem like it's working, actually. Here's the latest. Senator J.D. Vance, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, that is, alongside President Trump, the two of them have released a joint statement saying the following. The most foolish and inept thing ever done by congressional Republicans was allowing our country to hit the debt ceiling in 2025. It was a mistake and is now something that must be addressed. Meanwhile, Congress is considering a spending bill that would give sweetheart provisions for government censors and for Liz Cheney. The bill would make it easier to hide the records of the corrupt January 6th committee, which accomplished nothing for the American people and hid security failures that happened that day. This bill would also give Congress a pay increase while many Americans are struggling this Christmas. Increasing the debt ceiling is not great, but we'd rather do it on Biden's watch. If Democrats won't cooperate on the debt ceiling now, what makes anyone think they would do it in June during our administration? Let's have this debate now. And we should pass a streamlined spending bill that doesn't give Chuck Schumer and the Democrats everything they want. Republicans want to support our farmers, pay for disaster relief, and set our country up for success in 2025. The only way to do that is with a temporary funding bill without Democrat giveaways, combined with an increase in the debt ceiling. Anything else is a betrayal of our country. Republicans must get smart, all capital letters, and tough, all capital letters. If Democrats threaten to shut down the government unless we give them everything they want, then call their bluff, all capital letters. That's a huge sign right here. It is Schumer and Biden who are holding up aid to our farmers and disaster relief. And now the closing two sentences, all of these capital letters. This chaos would not be happening if we had a real president. We will in 32 days, exclamation point. So the official word from President Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance is, this is crap, stop it now. The only thing you should do is pass a simple debt ceiling hike and continuing resolution, clean, nothing else in it. That's it. And if you don't do that, shut it down. Shut down the government. Republicans must get smart and tough. If Democrats threaten to shut down the government unless we give them everything they want, call their bluff. Go for it. Let's go to a shutdown. So we reach the next phase. Are there spines on Capitol Hill? We'll see. Maybe they're handing them out right now. I'm sure they have. I'm sure they've spent money on that too. They've got some stockpile of spines somewhere. Now's the time, boys. Go grab your spines. You're going to need them. We got a big fight ahead. It's for the country, not for your donors, not for the lobbyists. Coming up, Congressman Scott Perry joins us from Pennsylvania's 10th. He's a member of the House Freedom Caucus. He'll react to the latest news here on this spending drama. And the economist E.J. Antoni rounds us off at 5:30. It's all ahead on the Vince Colonnese Show.